Hey, everybody, welcome into another episode of the Personal Privilege Podcast. I'm Chris Sanchez, joined as always by my partners at Salient Strategies, Dustin Cox and Andrew Cates. And this morning, joining us, you know him as the state representative from College Station. It's Representative John Raney. Representative, good morning. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's just a pleasure to be with you guys.
Representative, as I mentioned there in your intro, you represent College Station, you represent the campus of Texas A&M, and you yourself are a fellow Aggie. What does that mean to you to represent something so near and dear to yourself?
It's a blast. I guess you'd say Aggies have a particular love for their school that maybe some other folks don't, although I hope everybody does. I think we all ought to love the place where we went to school and enjoy it and have fond remembrances. Those times are the times where you get to not only grow up, but also to explore life a little without parents. And I think it's probably one of the more fun times of life.
Now, Representative, in your normal life, you actually own a business there in Aggie Land that's actually very much an institution. Can you tell the folks a little bit about what it is and how you came into that business?
Well, when I was in school at A&M, the bookstore was called the Exchange Store. That's where people went on campus to buy their books. It was where Heaton Hall is, if you know where Heaton Hall is now. I got that job because my brother, who went to Sam Houston, had worked in the bookstore at Sam, and then several years later, he and some guys opened a store over at Stephen F. Austin, and I went over there and helped him get it all set up one summer, and I came back and I said, well, gosh, why don't I go to the bookstore and get me a job on campus where I don't have to drive anywhere, and I made whopping 91 cents an hour. So I've been doing this since about 1966. 1969, we, with some partners, opened then called Texas Aggie Bookstore, and have been there ever since at Northgate all that time. I've had two other locations at different times, but Northgate's home. I've been there so far 51 years. So it's been a fun place to be. It doesn't look anything like it did. The campus is from 12,000 students to 66,000 students. We had about maybe 200 women on campus when I was in school, and I bet more than half are probably women now. The Corps pretty well stayed the same. I was not in the Corps, although I did spend some time in the military, and I have great admiration for it. I needed to work when I was going to school, so I didn't feel like I had time to be in the Corps. In my freshman year, it was non-compulsory. I somewhat regret that because I see some of my classmates who have friends that they made in the Corps over 50 years ago, and those relationships are still fantastic.
What would you say is the biggest change to College Station and the campus as a whole?
Well, the size and the number of things that there is to do today. We had 2 or 3 beer joints when I was in school, and that was about it. And we had to go to Huntsville or Waco or Austin for girls, to see girls. So, lots of changes. Football program, the football field. I mean, it was added on 2 or 3 times before they tore it down and built what now is Kyle Field. Students are the same today as they were back then. They're there to learn, but they're also there to mature and to experience time away from mom and dad and learn responsibility. I think that's probably what they learn quicker than anything else. I used to say that watching the kids that came to work for me, I would have some that would come as freshmen, and by the time Thanksgiving got there, they had caught up with the sophomores. It's just that quick because they become so independent.
So you mentioned the football stadium. Obviously, the Aggies start their football season this weekend. How do you think the season's going to play out for the Aggies this year?
Well, I expect we'll have a pretty good season, but you never know in our conference in the SEC what's going to happen. The fortunate thing is we play Alabama the second game of the season. That's also the unfortunate thing. we don't know how they're going to do. They're going to have a new program, a new quarterback and all that. So I'm hopeful that they won't have developed their professional attitude before we play them.
Yeah, the more Alabama changes, the more they stay the same since Nick Saban's still there. As long as he's there, they're always going to be Alabama.
They're going to be Alabama. And of course, that is a tradition that goes all the way back to Bear Bryant, who also coached here at A&M. And I still see some of those guys around town that played for Bear back in the 50s.
How do you feel about the move to the SEC?
It's the greatest thing that ever happened to A&M. The football program is substantially better. Finances of the athletic program is substantially better. I miss the Southwest Conference. So that tells you how I am. I'm a traditionalist, and I really didn't want to leave. Then when you saw the money, it was obvious that they had to go. And it's worked out well. We're developing new rivalries. Of course, we played LSU for 20 years. Bear Bryant signed that contract. We went down there and played them in Baton Rouge every year for 20 years, as we did Rice in Houston for 20 years. So that's before the town grew, before the stadium was very big. Could get more fans in those places than they could here. But
rivalries, does that mean you would be one of the legislators up to help bring back the Aggie Texas Longhorn game on Thanksgiving?
I would love to see that program revived. I don't know whether it's really good for either team, because there's going to be a loss that's going to take place for somebody at that time. I would love to see it back. I don't think it's a legislative priority at all. I think it's one of those things that the universities have to deal with that, and we should stay out of it.
Yeah, Representative, as you can tell, I went to the Burn Orange School here in Austin. I definitely miss the rivalry. I miss that during Thanksgiving, having my Aggie family always talking a lot of noise to me. So I hope they get that back on the field someday.
I do too. But, with scheduling the way it is, they do it so far in advance. It could be a 8 or 10 year process of getting that game back together if they decide to do it. And I'll tell you, what's going to drive it more than us thinking we would like to have it is dollars. Everything seems to revolve around dollars in athletics today.
So, Representative, obviously you're the huge Aggie. What are some of your favorite Aggie traditions that you get to experience?
I think that taps, silver taps is probably my favorite. It is a very solemn occasion, and one that I like seeing the little boy in the background there. Silver Taps is a meaningful time. It recognizes when we lose a student, and I think it's just one of the greatest things we've ever done. Of course, I like Midnight Yell, and I like standing up at the football games and the 12th man. There's just lots of traditions that are unique. And, when I was in school, all you have to do it is one time and it becomes a tradition.
Now, Representative, obviously you Aggies like to stick together in the legislature. Besides yourself, who would you say is the biggest Aggie at the Texas legislature?
There's a bunch, but I'll just go and say that John Otto was probably the biggest. John was drum major of the band when he was in school, and he was biggest Aggie of them all because he lived and breathed it daily, and then came back and worked here until his recent death.
Yeah, that was actually one of my former bosses when I first started at the Capitol. And I mean, you talk about the smartest guy in the room, whatever room he walked into.
A very smart fella. I came over and testified before I was ever elected on his sales tax bill for Ways and Means. And John was not only a smart guy, he was a very nice person to be around. Never heard him say an ugly word about anyone.
I'd like the record to also reflect that a Longhorn just complimented an Aggie as well.
It happens. It happens every now and then.
Well, I'll compliment a Longhorn. Drew Darby is one of my good friends, and he and I happened to have been in school at the same time. We were just one was on the Brazos River and one was on the Colorado. But Drew Darby is a heck of a guy, also a very good man, and someone who has been, even though we're the same age, he's been a mentor to me, and I've learned a lot from both he and John. So there's a lot of good people. One of the most enjoyable things that I can say that's come out of being a member of the legislature, other than passing what I think are some good bills, is the friendships that we have developed. And that doesn't also have to be Republican and Democrat. It has to be with good people doing what they think is for the good of the citizens of Texas. One of my dear friends is Bobby Guerra, and Bobby is from McAllen. He and I sat down next to each other at freshman orientation. I'd never met Bobby before in my life. He's a friend. He may be a D and I may be a R, but we can get along and we can have a good time together. His wife and my wife have developed a nice relationship. I've been down and hunted on his place down in South Texas, quail hunting, matter of fact, with John Sharp. And he's just one of those guys that is a good, honest person who is there for the right purposes. And that's what's rewarding when you get to know those kinds of folks.
So you've been in the legislature since 2011. What would you say is your favorite achievement individually that you've had?
I'm going to go back to the relationships. That is the most important thing. Every business that you're in is developed with relationships. I don't care whether you're a school teacher or a salesman, is obvious, or a university professor or whatever you are. If you can't develop relationships with the people that you're working with and for, then you're going to be a failure. And I think that building relationships with many of the good folks who serve in the legislature and who are staffers. Let me back up a minute, because I'm going to give credit to Anna and to Austin and Caitlin and Julie, people who've worked in my office. They do the work. There's no doubt about it. But they also keep me informed. And I don't want people around me that say, well, we're going to do it just because he wants us to do it. I want them to argue with me a little bit. I want them to express differences, because I need that.
Well, Representative, we want to thank you again for coming on today. It's a fantastic conversation. Best of luck to your Aggies this year as they go to the SEC, and hopefully we can get back together on the football field sometime soon with Texas A&M.
Well, let's get together in Austin sometime for an iced tea. How's that?
Sounds great. I really appreciate it.